As you can see in front of you, the crypto market is experiencing a dip after having a slight relief rally early in the week. I must say this August chop is not unexpected. 6 days ago, I did this tweet saying, welcome to Ghost Month, because statistically, August is a seasonally weaker month of the year where you typically see weaker performance across Bitcoin and thus the rest of the altcoin market. But in today's video, I want to drill into a conversation that I'm starting to see crop up a lot online as to whether that was potentially the top on Bitcoin. And if the answer is no, what can we expect in the coming months and how can we position ourselves for the coming months? Because I'm seeing posts like this, most top looking on Bitcoin since 15K IMO, structure-wise, everything. This is getting a lot of likes. This gets 650,000 views, 1.8K likes. So people are now starting to say that Bitcoin has potentially topped. And I actually want to look into this analytically instead of just, dismissing it and saying, yeah, it's not true because I don't want to believe it. I actually want to look into the data and see if the data is suggesting a top on Bitcoin. And if it isn't suggesting a top on Bitcoin, is this a buy the dip opportunity? And if it is a buy the dip opportunity, what altcoins should we be looking at? That is the conversation that I want to discuss today. So if you enjoy content like this, where I keep you up to date with the crypto market, make sure to smash the like button to show the algorithm that you enjoy content like this, and click the subscribe button so you don't miss a single video. I'm coming at you with daily videos at the moment. So is this a top or a buying opportunity? That's the first question I want to answer looking at the data. So let's take a very data-driven approach to looking at this. So we do know that seasonally, August is a weaker period and Q3 in general is a weaker period compared to Q4 and Q1. This is very clear in the data. We typically see Bitcoin performing worse over the Q3 period, and then it typically has its biggest expansionary periods in Q4, as you can see in front of you, being the strongest average return month with an average return of 85.42% and followed by Q1, which is also a very strong return month of 51%. Looking at the charts on Bitcoin as well, I personally, from a structural point of view, looking at the weekly and the monthly, don't think there is anything to get too alarmed about, considering previous bear markets have only began on a breakdown of the weekly money noodle. This happened in March 2022 and triggered the bear market. So you can see we had a few fake outs, but we never really closed below on the weekly. We kept going up, made a peak in November. We broke down, had a bearish retest confirmation in April, and then ended up trading sideways / down for a couple of years. Then we started to flip the trend in 2023, beginning the new bull market, so the trough, which was FTX, all the way to the current peak, which was in July. But there has been no flip of this momentum indicator, and it's the same across many other high time frame indicators. This would likely only happen if we started to break below. Right now, it's like 103 to 105K, but obviously this keeps trending upwards over time and is likely to meet an equilibrium. But until we start to close below and break below, that is really your bull / bear market indicator. So on that front, and from a Bitcoin structural point of view, I think anyone watching this would agree. This actually looks like pretty good PA, considering we consolidated for a long time below 110K in that range. We finally broke out. So if anything, you're looking for more expansion to the upside from a macro point of view. But from a micro point of view, on the lower time frames, I do completely understand why people are a little bit unsure at the moment, considering Bitcoin did break down from its range low on the H4 at 115K and even wicked down to a key point of interest in the 112K zone. We talked about this on yesterday's show, so I'm not going to go too deep into the short-term Bitcoin technical analysis here, but it does look likely that we could get a retest of this zone. And if you go onto the daily, we also know that this is a key pocket as well between the 108 and 110K zone. So there's a chance we come down here. If we do come down there, I think it's going to be possibly a quick flush. So I do have some ladder orders set in that zone for Bitcoin and corresponding altcoins. The other scenario, of course, is that we flip. So this could end up being a higher low and we actually end up flipping momentum here and reclaiming range low. This would set us up nicely for a new all-time high retest. And that could happen as soon as next week as well. So look, even though my bias is to the downside because this does look like a bearish rejection, gun to my head, I do think it's only a matter of time before we come back up and test all-time highs again, considering how the high time frame chart looks like on the weekly and the monthly. That is purely taking a technical look at things. So just to recap, we're looking good on the higher time frames. We're looking a little bit shakier on the low time frames. But that also aligns with the seasonality, because if you're looking at the low time frame, you're likely going to be tracking the performance of Bitcoin over August, potentially September. And if you're looking at the high time frame, you're likely going to see the price performance stretched out across a longer time period, which starts to also go towards that seasonality argument of potentially a rally in Q4, Q1. We're going to look at the cycle top indicators very soon, though, to see whether that is painting a different picture. What's painting an interesting picture at the moment, though, is the fact that even though Bitcoin had a slight decline, Ethereum BTC actually maintained around the top of its range high. So ETH BTC now in a range, but it didn't actually break down. Many other times where Bitcoin's dipped earlier in the cycle, we actually saw ETH BTC break down. Instead, what we have is quite a bullish ETH BTC. Yes, it is facing a bit of resistance here in the 0.035 zone, but it has had a flip of the weekly momentum indicator and actually looks good structurally. And this is being driven by a rotation that we are seeing from Bitcoin into Ethereum. This is evident if you look at the ETF flows, Bitcoin having a few red days and also some red days in late July, whereas Ethereum, when Bitcoin was having red days in late July, was actually printing very strong green days and only has clocked a couple of red days in the past week. Bitcoin's still red for its fourth consecutive day. Ethereum only strung together 2 red consecutive days. So this shows me that retail, normie, mom and dad investors, and potentially some institutions are a little bit more focused towards Ethereum right now. It makes sense due to the narrative alignment that we are seeing with the SEC and that news, regulatory news, the Genius stablecoin bill, all of this bodes well for Ethereum, and we're seeing a lot of TVL starting to flood on chain as well, which is positive for Ethereum. So that is actually good for altcoins, because altcoins are more correlated to Ethereum than they are to Bitcoin. So as long as Ethereum maintains relative strength versus Bitcoin, this is good for the health of the market overall. But clearly altcoins would still go down if we saw, a lower sweep on Bitcoin. I'll get into, how I would go about playing that opportunity very shortly. AERO also points out, because I also looked to see what other creators were saying on X, and this is a creator I respect. He says that he doesn't see a reason to be bearish from a high time frame point of view. This is also the trend that I am seeing established. The SEC is now committed to bringing US markets on chain through asset tokenization, creating a pro-innovation environment with very clear rules for builders. That is something we're seeing. What we're also seeing potentially is rate cuts happening very soon. That is a positive catalyst for markets. And then you also have the positive tailwind for markets in the future of quantitative easing. That is a future catalyst to look forward to. We always know that markets are forward looking. AERO goes on to say here, the biggest economy in the world is behind crypto in a very public way. The US has identified that stablecoin issuers can be their big new buyer of debt, which means it is very much in their interest to pump crypto. That is a very interesting observation that I haven't seen many other people make. I'm going to actually bookmark this for that observation. It's a very, very smart. The other thing I think that he doesn't mention here, but I think it's very prevalent with Trump actually pushing stablecoins, is the fact that de-dollarization is a huge threat longer term with BRICS, and they certainly see getting ahead of the stablecoin race, especially as we're seeing like China banning crypto headlines again, is certainly in their favor, because if they can offer stablecoins, which is a very fast, cheap way to transact on chain, especially in third world countries, they can actually start owning those markets as well and making people reliant on their US dollar stablecoins and infrastructure, which I suppose is part of the mindset behind launching his World Liberty project. In terms of altcoins, taking a look at how they typically react at this stage in the cycle, it also, at this stage of the year, in terms of the month that we're in, so August heading into this next period and then into Q4, you can see that typically this period also is a lagging period for Total 3, which is the altcoin index excluding Bitcoin and Ethereum, with typical rallies beginning in the prior 2 years in October and November. So we actually saw many shakeouts in August during this period. And if you even, in prior years, and if you even look at prior Bitcoin bull markets going back, you can also see that the shakeouts typically occurred in this period as well. Like you can see August here was very choppy. So July run up, August chopped. We actually had a big bull market scare. I know this looks small, but actually from the top to the bottom, this was a minus 21% move on Bitcoin, which was like a minus 50% move on alts. Just to contextualize that, the move from the top to the current level is only 7%. So theoretically, we could come down 20%, retest that weekly band as a bull market indicator, and still be in a bullish trend. So give yourself some wiggle room in terms of these ideas in the short term, because I don't want you to get shaken out of your bags. I don't want you to get scared heading into what should be a much better period for crypto. In fact, this could be a massive opportunity, and I'll discuss how you can take advantage of that very, very soon. The last indicator that I want to take a look at is the Bitcoin bull market peak indicator, because we do want to establish, it doesn't look like it based on the data, but we still want to establish whether anything is triggering or anything is indicating that we are getting or have had a Bitcoin top. And if you do look at all of the indicators that were prevalent in the last few cycles, none of them have actually hit. In fact, we're in the 100% hold category according to CoinGlass. Now, I don't think we're ever going to get into this sell period this cycle because of how some of these indicators are constructed. They are exponential indicators, which I think maybe with the institutionalization of Bitcoin, it's a little bit unrealistic to expect that we would hit peak territory in all of the indicators. But the fact that many of the progress bars are actually sub 20% and none of the indicators have even ticked into the mid territory here, that indicates to me that there still isn't that peak froth that you would expect at a Bitcoin top. And then you add the macro backdrop, you add the current bull case for crypto with Trump, and I think it actually sets a pretty decent picture for crypto over this next period, 6 months to 12 months and potentially longer. I think you've got to reframe your mindset around, potentially the fact that this could, obviously there'll be a cycle top on Bitcoin and alt will crash once Bitcoin puts in its top, but this could actually be in an extended cycle, and I'm open to the idea that it is. In fact, one of my controversial opinions, I guess, and maybe not controversial for you guys because you'd probably like it, I know I'd like it, is that we're actually going to see a peak in 2026. I think a lot of people are calling for October. It would be very fitting for the market to actually correct during this period and then end up blasting upwards in October when people had their sell timeframes, and then only to see the market consolidate and then go for a secondary top, leaving a lot of people sidelined in 2026. That is definitely a scenario that I'm also eyeing. And Moritz has a good post here saying, all these top and bottom signals on the timeline are so useless. Crypto is way bigger than our little bubble. The market doesn't care whether NFTs or meme coins have pumped or not. The cycle top isn't in yet. We've probably got another good 6 to 12 months to go, especially if you focus on the right altcoins. So now I want to get into my strategy. I want to give you an update on how I'm currently positioning my portfolio, and then I want to get into some of the top narratives that I am seeing that could be beneficiaries over this next little period in the market. And subsequently, if we do get any further dips to the downside, these are the types of coins that I would be looking at accumulating. All right, so this is my strategy in the market. My playbook is quite simple. 1, DCA, quality assets on dips. What do I mean by quality? I'm talking about assets with narrative, technical, and relative strength alignment. So are they outperforming Ethereum, or are they start to look like they could outperform Ethereum? Are they showing technical alignment? So is there a technical trigger for an entry? And is there narrative alignment? Is it a strong narrative and a strong project? The thing is, in this market, it's actually not that hard to spot winning projects, I think, this cycle. Now, that might sound counterintuitive given what we've currently seen, but you have to remember, during peak euphoria of the market, the strongest stuff is going to pump. And the reality is there are a lot of dead tokens which are still flooding the total crypto market cap index from last cycle. So when I actually went through CoinGecko the other day and I looked at the top 200, there were only really 10 to 20 tokens, which in my opinion were still seriously building, still had tailwinds, still had big communities. And these are the obvious ones that are going to have outsized growth during this next period in the market. So although you do have to know where to look, and although you do need to make sure you're in the right coins, I don't think it's that hard to actually spot tokens with narrative alignment. I think what's harder is getting the right technical entry on these coins, and that's where you're going to need to be a little bit stricter and more patient in waiting for dips and waiting for the charts to align with your thesis, and then of course having high time frame invalidation levels which can protect against downside. Because if you're entering a coin at this stage in the cycle, I believe it's extremely prudent to have a level where you would actually invalidate on that thesis. The other thing I wouldn't be doing at this very moment, I will be doing it toward, later in the cycle, or if we get a big flush to the downside where I've got some orders set, is using leverage. I would probably just focus on spot right now, unless you're a low time frame or swing trader where leverage is actually to your advantage to manage capital efficiency. If you aren't, I would focus on playing the spot market. The other thing I would be is patient. Seeing a lot of people freak out on these dips, but forgetting the bigger picture, which hopefully I'm reinstilling in your head today. Now, to go over the bigger picture in terms of my portfolio strategy, I thought today would be a good time to revisit the current split that I'm using for my crypto portfolio. It's a 50-50 split. 50% of my portfolio are in longer term assets. Think assets like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, Hyperliquid, etc. these are assets that I am planning on holding longer term, so potentially multi-year. I think there are some altcoins which are going to do really well that have found product market fit multi-year. However, this doesn't mean that I won't take profits at the top. If we're starting to see top indicators, if we're starting to see blow off tops, I'm still open to taking pretty heavy profits, maybe 50% of my bags off the table in terms of my long-term investments. Then I have my short, but keeping in mind that I still want to, maintain exposure for the longer term, because I don't want to be completely out of Bitcoin. Even if I think it's peaked, I could be wrong. And if I'm wrong, I want exposure to Bitcoin because I may not be able to get on the train again. It's the same as other assets. So that's why I still want a portfolio that I'm willing to just accept a huge drawdown on. But hopefully that's hedged by the profits that I am able to take. Just want to make that distinction. That's 50%. That's my long-term portfolio. My short-term portfolio, short to mid-term, is my swing investment portfolio. This is the portfolio where I'm narrative trading, I'm opening new positions, and I'm getting into more aggressive altcoins. I'm moving down the risk curve into riskier assets towards the end of the cycle. I'm not actually deploying as much in terms of my stablecoin weightings, but I'm dialing up the risk and I'm lowering the stakes in order to get exposure to that craziest period in the market, which is that final few months of a bull run. So these are all coins that are aligned with the market, are exhibiting strength, also some low cap punts that I think at some point will do well. This comprises 50% of my portfolio, which can actually make up a huge percentage of my gains in the right environment. But the difference between this percentage of my portfolio and the long-term 50% is that this 50%, I'm willing at some point, any token in this portfolio to completely cut. I'm much more ruthless. It doesn't mean I don't like the tokens. I'm just much more ruthless because I go in with the base case of all of these tokens are going to go to zero. And if I go in with the base case of all of these tokens are going to go to zero, I'll do a much better job with risk management. I'll do a much better job with profit taking. And if I'm proven wrong and they actually keep going up, that's great. I'll be able to maintain a moon bag in these positions. I'll incrementally take profits on the way up, and I'll just keep making money as they go up and up and up and up and up and up. So it's very good if I end up being wrong and they don't go to zero. But that's my base case in case they do. And that's why I like to reframe my portfolio in terms of 50% long-term and 50% short-term. Now, it can be the other way around. You can have 80% short-term and 20% long-term if you are a short-term trader. You could be 100% short-term. You could be all long-term. You might be a multi-year investor and then you'll play the cycles very differently to how I'm playing. I'm just being authentic to me on this channel, and hopefully by sharing what I'm doing, it'll contextualize a lot of the plays that I'll talk about. Even later in this video, like not all of the tokens that I'm going to speak about later in this video, do I think necessarily are going to be around for multi-years. They may do very well this cycle because they have narrative alignment in my opinion, but they may not be around for multiple years. So just keep that in mind. You have to treat riskier altcoins differently from your core long-term portfolio, but obviously the riskier altcoins is how you make a lot of money at the end of the cycle. So that is my strategy. I will probably do maybe a strategy video where I go in more depth and give more examples, but I wanted to give you an update today as I have been seeing some questions about it. All right, now that you know my strategy, now that you know my thoughts on the market, let's go into some market trends that I am currently seeing right now. These are the very current trends in the market, but also forecasting what trends could be about to take off. And hopefully I'll also give you some trade ideas in this video because there are actually a couple trades. One I literally just took that I'm going to share with you today, hot off the press. Another one I'm looking at entry very, very soon. And then I think there are some good ideas here for you also midterm. So let's go through them. First thing to establish is that pump fun is flipping bonk fun again. There's actually an inverse trade here. Now the inverse trade is that whenever pump is doing really well, you should actually probably look at longing bonk eco. And when bonk eco is doing really well, you should look at longing pump eco. So it's kind of the inverse trade. I guess it's just about understanding when one is stalling and when the other one's running, because I've seen an inverse correlation between pump and bonk. Pump, however, still has a little bit of juice in the tank because we've only just started to see the first H4 reversal, which is a very key flip. If it actually comes back down into this zone, I would look at getting an entry. So keep that in mind. The RSI is looking a little bit topped out at the moment, so we may actually see price come down. If we do see that, it would be a good entry in my opinion because I think pump is now starting to gain some traction again. Paradise was spot on in the group. He's our head low time frame trader. He hit a 101% trade on pump fun. He's been absolutely killing it in the group. So if you want the latest trades, make sure you're in Mars High Club. Quickly also wanted to mention that in the Mars High Club, we have a brand new analyst who is a low time frame trader who just joined Surf XBT. He's been absolutely killing it with his latest trades. You could see he hit a nice ETH trade. He hit a nice ZORA trade. So I think we've actually created one of the best trading communities in crypto because we have Doc and Morin, who are high time frame swing traders, they cover the US and Europe sessions. Now we have Surf covering more of the US session, which was slightly lacking before, admittedly. Now it's much better. Surf actually shorts as well. So for people that want to make money in both directions, he made a great short on Ethereum, 500% the other day. I don't really short, but it's good to have different sorts of traders. He complements the mix very well because he is more of a scalper, and we battle tested him for months before we actually gave him a channel. I'm serious about only bringing on good, highly skilled traders, and I can confidently say that we have managed to do that across the board. So if you are interested in trading, want trade setups, obviously, Fabian and I post our fundamental alpha in the group. Surf, Morin, Paradise, and Doc are going to be your trading dream team, and I genuinely think, and I've been in a lot of the other trading groups, we have built one of the best, if not the best, trading team in crypto. I must say though, because I want to be fair, I don't like saying things without genuinely believing them, Chroma is also very good. If I had to shout out one other trading community, it would probably be Chroma and Follis. I love them. I'm subscribed to them. But then I think, and I've looked at all of the groups, we are definitely up there with them. So they're the two I'd join if you were a full-time trader. Link in the description below. Obviously, there's a lot more to the Mars High Club, but I just wanted to focus on that aspect. Well done, Paradise, of course, for hitting that pump trade. I didn't quite get this reclaim set up, but I'll be a bit more patient and see if I could potentially get an entry on a slight dip here. But yeah, going back to the pump thesis, it's kind of weird. It's kind of an inverse trade. So my plan is to continue to ride pump up a little bit here, but then actually rotate some into bonk and useless, which are now starting to dip. Now, I did get stopped out, cut out of my latest useless buy, but if pump keeps running, I think this could keep bleeding and actually represent a great opportunity to accumulate more tokens. By the way, I'm holding some long term. I'm just talking about my latest buy, which was a short term trade. Remember, splitting up as well, like buys in terms of time horizons in your portfolio is a very good strategy. And then I'll probably look at trying to re-enter this once it either reclaims strength or we get another flush to the downside. And I still think it'll do well, mid to long term. So there's no worries there. However, I think it's important to recognize the current inverse synergy that we're seeing between pump and bonk ecosystem. So keep your eye on the pump ecosystem, because it is a hated rally, and I actually did a short on my YouTube channel. I've been uploading shorts, so I don't know if you guys have seen them, but I've been scripting shorts, and yeah, I think they're quite good. I actually did a video on pump. Which one was it? It was one of these. Basically, I did a video on why I thought pump was going to go on a hated rally. If it's not on here, it's on my Instagram, but I don't know if it actually got uploaded to YouTube, but it was definitely on Instagram and TikTok, and it'll also be uploaded to YouTube. But yeah, this was good, and we got ahead of the curve a little bit there. I wish I traded it, but it's all right. At least Paradise and the members got the trade. I was asleep at the wheel for that one, admittedly. But next narrative that I'm currently seeing, and this is quite time sensitive because Sam Altman, OpenAI, is launching ChatGPT 5 very soon, is AI. And the reason why I think the AI market is an interesting thing to be watching right now is because a lot of them are absolutely smashed. A lot of the AI tokens are in the gutter. And because of this, it doesn't take much to actually see a repricing to the upside or a short squeeze to the upside. So as you can see, Sam Altman teasing ChatGPT 5 very soon. I'm personally very excited for this because I do a lot of crypto research on O3, and I'm developing my own models and my own workflows for crypto research, which I'll share with you when the time's right. But once 5.0 launches, I'm going to really put it to the test. So expect content for that. Subscribe for content on that. Going to be very exciting to test out whether this can actually take our research to the next level. I always test the new AI models, but in terms of the narrative alignment with the crypto market, I think this is also potentially a catalyst. And then you're going to see Gemini coming out with their new model. And just as this AI competition heats up, I think it could put more eyes on the AI narrative. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the AI narrative has one-to-one correlation with crypto. In recent times, it hasn't. NVIDIA conferences were the trigger in 2023, 2024. Now AI tokens aren't really moving, but I just want to put them on your radar for you to maybe create an AI watch list, and especially a couple of these trades that I'm about to point out, because I'm just saying when the market runs, it can reprice higher pretty quick. And I am personally of the belief at some point we're still going to see a big AI run this cycle. So I'm looking at actively positioning in a few coins in AI this cycle. And I want to go over some of my recent positions. So Cookie is one of them. They actually recently announced their Attention Capital Markets. Which changes the typical social fi campaigns that you see. So if you've been following KAITO, you'll know that people can yap and potentially earn airdrops for projects. What Cookie is doing, which is very unique, is it's introducing a capital commitment component, which means you actually get boosted snaps, so boosted rewards if you commit to holding the token. This is an improved model, an improved flywheel on the previous version that other competitors like KAITO are using. I think this is very cool, as what it's essentially doing is no longer just incentivizing people to farm posts on X, but actually make sure that true believers are getting rewarded. So if you actually believe in a project, you will get rewarded more than those who are just yapping and farming engagement. So very, very cool. That is one thing that I like about Cookie. The other thing that I like is the market cap. So it's at 81 mil market cap, 138 million fully diluted valuation. KAITO, their competitor, is at 269, but a 1 bill valuation. So almost a 10x discrepancy in fully diluted valuation. Now, the way I view both of these plays, right, KAITO and Cookie, as these are kind of pick and shovels plays for AI. Obviously, as the AI market does well, if it ever has a run at some point, these should cover the upside to the entire pump as people rely on these analytics to maximize this cycle, especially as Cookie has their AI agent dashboard. That is a very useful tool in an AI run to spot opportunities. The other thing is, as the AI market improves, a lot more projects want to market on these platforms, so their revenue actually goes up. So they become they're basically the launch pads, if you want to think about it that way in terms of reflexivity of the AI run. So instead of having to try and pick 20 AI agents, you could theoretically just hold Cookie and KAITO and get exposure to the upside of that market, which I like, because I like pick and shovel plays in the market. I'm more comfortable holding them than holding an agent that can go to zero. However, if I had to pick out of the two, I still like what KAITO's doing, by the way. I just think Cookie's valuation's better. And I think their take on attention capital markets, so SocialFi, is slightly better. And I can't reveal what it is right now, but I had a meeting with the team last week, and they announced that there's something very cool coming, which could be a massive revenue driver. So I'm sure they'll release that in due time, but that is something that I'm also looking forward to. I actually genuinely use Cookie's platform a lot for my own research. I was actually researching earlier today Mantle, for example, because this is one of my core DeFi holdings, and I was looking at why the price performance was so good, and I was analyzing how sentiment actually skewed aggressively to the positive end here, and you could also see mindshare was growing aggressively alongside metrics going up. You can also see a lot of big accounts positively tweeting about Mantle as well. Ben Zhu, the founder, CEO of Bybit, said big things are happening to Mantle. So obviously they have that Bybit push. So I think tokens that have a big exchange pushing them, we've seen this with Binance and BNB, they seem to have a bigger moat in the market, and they seem to have better relative strength in the market, aka a little bit more security and downside protection than other tokens. Now, it doesn't mean Mantle can never go down. It just means it typically sees a very strong buy reaction, and that's due to the underlying mechanics of how it's utilized on the exchange compared to other tokens. And you'll see this is common across most of the major exchange tokens. This is actually a range that I highlighted on the YouTube channel. So anyone that took this trade down here, I was very vocal about it at 57 cents, had an amazing trade, not only to range high, but if you did hold a moon bag, which I always recommend doing, if you're bullish on the token, this is obviously a longer term hold of mine, you would have actually made 67% from that range low. Now, for people that aren't on the bandwagon, the good news is we've finally flipped from a ranging environment potentially into a new trending environment. Doesn't quite look like that on the weekly, but on the daily, that's definitely the case. So you could potentially look at a pullback to or a retest of range high, which is currently sitting at the 78 cent level. You got invalidation on spot at 66 cents technically, so maybe you wouldn't enter with leverage, but this could potentially be a good entry for that next run up at $1.40. So as Ben said, big things are coming for Mantle, and I just want to hold them because I know that Ethereum's a really strong narrative. They're an Ethereum L2, but they're also offering a lot more on the tokenization side, on the Mantle banking side, and their affiliation with Bybit gives it kind of like a multi-pronged narrative. So that's why I hold it. And also the metrics are going insane. Active addresses absolutely exploded, transactions exploding. So just across the board, TVL, it's a pretty strong ecosystem in my opinion. So I did take some profits into the range high here, but I still hold a much bigger bag than the profits I took to try and ride this even higher. And as I said, for those that missed an entry, it is pulling back a bit now. You might actually get a decent one in this zone. So just keep your eye on that one. Moving on to other AI plays. A very interesting one that I've been researching over the last week is Mind Network. So this is a protocol that I think I've spoken about in the past. It's an FHE infrastructure-based quantum-resistant protocol. They're backed by Binance Labs, so you can read into that what you will. They're actually in the build program of Chainlink. But what's very interesting in my opinion is the valuation. So it's at a 17 million market cap, 68 million FDV, but a lot of it is much longer term. So I'm looking at the market cap here, at least in terms of this cycle, because this is the most relevant figure. Overall, the market cap is quite low considering that they have big listings on Bybit, on Blofin, they're backed by Binance, or on Bitget, they're on Kraken. And fundamentally, I've met with the team multiple times. They're quite impressive from a tech point of view as well. Also, they have a big announcement coming today. To be honest, I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to share, but I think by the time the video is out, this will be announced. If not, you're getting the early scoop. Sorry, my network, but Byte Plus, they actually have a collaboration with them. They'll explain the details of the partnership more once they release their announcement, but Byte Plus is actually a subsidiary of ByteDance, so TikTok. It's basically their AI subsidiary, so they've developed all of their AI models, all of their AI services, so they're collaborating with some of the biggest players in the AI space as well. So from a technical point of view, what's the reason I took a position? Obviously, fundamentally, there's some of the reasons. Just market cap versus fundamentals, in my opinion, are quite attractive. But I also think from a technical point of view, it's attractive because you had this range, right? So you had this range that it kept testing. It had a big flush out. You had a big flush to the downside. It got eaten up quite aggressively. And now you're getting your first confluence retest of the noodle on the daily as well as this support. So for me, this is a very clear level where I can just cut below the monthly low if things go wrong. But if things go right, you can target all-time highs. It's a relatively recently listed token in the scope of crypto, launching back in March, April, I believe. And the highs are 13 cents, so potentially a 2x there on the table, which would only be 17 to 34 mil. In the right AI market, if our entries hold and you could be a bit more patient, you could potentially see it a lot higher than that as well. Like hundreds of millions would make sense for a protocol like this in the right market with the right listings. I'll let you guys do your own research, but that's a new one. I've spoken about it once before, but I wanted to give you guys the heads up that I took a new position in that today as well. Talking now about utility, this is what I want to finish off with. I mean, we've kind of already touched on utility. Technically, AI projects are utility, and technically Mantle as well, which I discussed before as a utility project. But I want to reiterate that clearly the biggest narrative right now is stablecoins and ETH betas. I'm not going to go over the same ones I've discussed in previous shows, like ENA. I want to highlight some specific things today. First one is asymmetry finance. This is a stablecoin protocol. They had an exploit, which at the time was very bad, but what I have been very impressed by was the team's ability to bounce back. They pretty much instantly recovered their TVL. They've already surpassed on day one 3.5 million, which is a great sign. This is honestly what I was waiting for. What I was scared about is people would be a little bit wary, so I wanted to see how they'd go in terms of regaining that TVL on day one, but they have, which is very, very impressive. So that is a great sign for the protocol. I'm looking for lower cap stablecoin betas. Like if you look at their market cap, obviously there's, the larger cap players, but I'm a bit of a degen, so I hold some lower cap stuff. This is only at 11 mil. So this is another one that I think has upside. I'm still holding. I didn't sell throughout that entire FUD. Still holding my position. Also, Steven, who I really respect, calculator guy in the space, DeFi creator I've been following for a long, long time, said that this is the use case for liquidity V2 that I was hoping to see, i.e. minting stables against yield-bearing stables where minted stable has robust enough PSM to maintain peg. Here you can mint at a 3% borrow rate against a 6% yielding stable. So there's an arbitrage there for people that want to make money, which makes it attractive for more TVL to go in to the ecosystem. I think this is early days in the eco. I think longer term, this can do quite well. So just wanted to remind you, still holding my position. In fact, I posted about this on Discord at the time to my position during the FUD. And that is already up almost to 2x, but I still think there's an opportunity there given the fact that the market cap is quite low. So look into that one. I've got two more protocols I want to touch on today whilst we're speaking about utility. The first one is Multibank. This is a new launch. I haven't had the opportunity to speak on it on the channel since it launched. I actually did give this one to you guys prior to the launch. It's launched very strongly. I did that on the Sunday live stream 2 weeks ago. But Multibank, if you don't know who they are, they're one of the biggest, if not the biggest derivatives broker in the entire world. They have a revenue of 361 million a year, EBITDA of 284.9 million a year in 2024. Projections also higher for the future. And this is very interesting because they had nothing to do with crypto, but they've just introduced their token and they're planning on going heavier into crypto. So I don't think a lot of the crypto community has really caught on. I mean, I know their FDV is very high, but their market cap is low, and they've got a very long vesting attached to a lot of the tokens. So once again, if you're trading for this cycle, FTV doesn't matter that much. We've seen Ondo prove that. We've seen many protocols prove that. Sui in recent times as well. But the market cap, in my opinion, isn't crazy considering they have, I think, a $400 million buyback happening in the coming years. They've already pledged $400 million in buybacks to the token, which is quite unique. So look, it's a newly launched token, so I'm not just saying ape, by the way. Go into your charts, draw out your ranges, be strict with your invalidations, implement the risk management I always speak about on the channel. But big dips on this token, in my opinion, could be a decent opportunity, especially as their staking also begins to roll out in the future. That'll give you ability to earn yield on the token. So this is an interesting play considering it's a TradFi broker coming into crypto, one of the biggest, not just some random crypto company doing it the other way around. So something to pay attention to. Doesn't happen very often in the space. What they're also doing is going into RWA. So they're launching one of the biggest RWA tokenization projects in the world, starting with $3 billion in real estate, which is pretty freaking crazy. Definitely look into this as well if you're interested in RWA. What's happening on the tokenization side in crypto in general at the moment is just absolutely crazy. And then the last protocol I wanted to touch on, it's a reminder because I think I talked about this last week, it's Fluid. I didn't want to do a utility show without mentioning Fluid because when you look at the top dexes by volume, you've got Uniswap, PancakeSwap, Radium, Airdrop, Fluid's coming in right underneath that. Yet their valuation is only 219 mil market cap. If you look at some of their other competitors, Uniswap is at a market cap 5.6 billion. If you want to look at Airdrop, and they almost flipped one day, by the way, for volume, which is absolutely crazy. If you look at Airdrop in terms of market cap compared to the 200 million market cap of Fluid, they're at 600, much higher FDV at 1.2 bill. So I think in terms of market cap versus DEX volume, Fluid and actually the growth of Fluid compared to the growth of these other chains, I think it represents value actually. Like they were nothing a couple of months ago, and all of a sudden they're shooting up the ranks. They're much cheaper. It's much more efficient. I can break, down the technicals. I know some of you don't love technicals, so I'm just going to keep it short in today's video. Very interesting technically from a tech perspective. So that has really shot up the ranks. Flipped Curve, flipped PENDLE, flipped ORCA, flipped Hyperliquid, although Hyperliquid has perp volume as well. So definitely keep your eye on Fluid. You'll notice in today's video, I'm looking more at market caps than just charts because I think it's also important to understand the opportunity relative to competitors. So looking at, Cookie relative to KAITO, looking at Fluid relative to Airdrop. These relativity plays, I think, are quite powerful. Looking at Mind Network relative to other protocols in the AI space. So wanted to focus a little bit more on that in today's video. So those are some of the trends I'm looking at. Obviously, there's more stuff as well, but wanted to hone in on those in today's video. Hopefully you enjoyed. I'll see you in tomorrow's show. Subscribe for content like this. Link in the description below to join the Mars High Club. Come and join our amazing trading community, and I will see you in the next video. Have a good rest of your day. Peace out.